Good afternoon and welcome to SnapTech IT's monthly webinar. My name is Ted Hulsey. I'm Chief Revenue Officer and your host for today's event. Thanks for joining in for the live session. This webinar will be recorded and circulated to all registrants. We encourage everyone to ask questions as we go along, and we'll try to address your questions on the fly. The topic for today is how small businesses can leverage ChatGPT for business growth. Today, I'm joined by SnapTech founder and president, Sean Brown. Welcome, Sean.
Ted, how are we doing today?
Doing well. It's good to be here. Exciting topic, lots of registrants, and really want to encourage everyone to make today a dialogue for us. Sean and I are super excited about this technology. We've been hitting it hard here at SnapTech and talking with a lot of other MSPs as well in the marketplace about how this technology is really going to transform a lot of things. So we're super fired up on the topic. So hit us with your questions. Let's look at the agenda. So Sean and I are going to divide and conquer a little bit on the content. Sean's going to take the first section and really introduce ChatGPT. Talk about how do you use it, how do you access it, some of the key features and benefits, and then touch on some of his favorite use cases. And then I'm going to pick the ball from there and talk a little bit about some of the more sales and marketing use cases that I've been leveraging and our team has been leveraging. And then then we're going to take it up one level, I guess, a little bit and just talk maybe more about the overall generative AI space and talk about some of the other tools and the way this whole AI space is marching ahead and give you a couple ideas of different ways to leverage these tools. And then we'll wrap up with a case study where I'll talk about a project I worked on in Q1 where we really leveraged AI in the process and a real life use case, real practical example. So again, hit us with your questions and we'll kind of get into it. One thing we like to do, we just like to spend 30 seconds letting folks know, if you're not an existing client, who is SnapTech IT. We are a nationwide managed service provider with offices in Atlanta, Phoenix, and San Francisco. The way we really work with clients is in two ways. We provide fully managed IT services, and that means full outsourced IT management for organizations that don't have any IT staff internally on their own payroll. And then we also supply co-managed IT to larger organizations that may have either a single IT person or an IT department, and they want to partner with an outsourced supplier. We call that co-managed IT. So just a little bit about us and what we do. And with that, let me turn things over to Sean and get us right into the content here today. And just give us, Sean, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, everybody, for joining. You guys will have to bear with me a little bit. I'm on the tail end of a head cold, so if I sound a little funny today, it's because I'm currently got a little head cold and I'm got a cough drop in, so I don't have a big coughing fit. So we're going to do our best to power through it. Like Ted was saying, this is one of the topics that I am just so excited about. I think the technology is just amazing and super cool. The applications and what I think you're going to be able to do now and in the future are going to revolutionize the way that we kind of interact and think about content and search and how we operate and get things done in our daily life. So let's start off and talk about just kind of what is ChatGPT. And so if you've heard it and you don't kind of know what this is yet, this is just a high level kind of introduction of kind of what ChatGPT is. And so think of it as kind of like a helpful kind of virtual assistant that you interact with in human language. So we've got some great case studies that we'll kind of go through in a few minutes. But it's really easy. It's free to sign up for. You just go to openai.com, create an account, and then there's a section you go to that's called ChatGPT. And when you get to it, you'll see a screenshot very similar to what Ted has got kind of displayed here for us. I think it kind of cuts off down towards the very bottom, but there's a prompt down at the very bottom where you're able to kind of just type in, just in real human language, what you're trying to accomplish or what information that you're interested in. And ChatGPT will use a natural human language kind of processing engine on the back end, understand what you're talking about, and provide you with real kind of answers to that, which is pretty amazing at the way that kind of works. You can see in the screenshot that there's some examples that it kind of prompts you with and kind of gives you some ideas of some things that you can do. And then some capabilities, and we'll talk about some limitations here in a minute on a slide in a few minutes. So that's just a little quick overview of kind of what this thing is. Let's kind of dive in a little bit to the history of it. And I think there's some pretty interesting things and some investments that people should know about as well. So it was kind of kicked off in 2015 is when kind of OpenAI officially was founded. And they went through a number of, just development cycles and started generating a lot of buzz, specifically around about 2019. 2019, there was a small, modest investment by a company called Microsoft that put about $1 billion into OpenAI as they were continuing to kind of develop this kind of artificial intelligence, kind of human language processing. And then starting around 2020 was when they first released this really kind of alpha version of what we now know as ChatGPT. And so they were able to kind of get it out there, let people start kind of playing with it. And then not only playing with it, but they were teaching it and letting it learn. And so for the next couple of years is when it really started kind of learning and getting better and better at kind of understanding and understanding kind of what humans were trying to ask of it and using its modeling to develop some pretty incredible responses to those questions. If you happen to see at the beginning of this year, Microsoft also invested another, I think, $10 billion into ChatGPT at the beginning of the year. And in total, I think they've invested now a little over $13 billion into this technology. So you can kind of see the importance that I think Microsoft views this as kind of the next killer app. In fact, Ted, I heard people, kind of talking over the last several months as we were kind of talking about doing this as ChatGPT, they were kind of equating it to as significant as when the internet was created. I don't know if I'm quite ready to go that far yet, but it's pretty impressive. So,
yeah, I mean, it's astounding to see the uptake of usage. I mean, from the day like ChatGPT was announced till now, I think there's been like 100 million accounts created or something like that. So, like there are quite a few people all over the world who are playing with this. I mean, the first time you log in and do it, you kind of don't know where you're starting. But as you get the hang of it, it's quite astounding. And you can kind of fall down the rabbit hole and a couple hours later come back up and you're like, wow, I just spent a lot of time doing some interesting things.
I believe I heard fastest growing user base on the internet ever.
Right.
To put that in perspective, which is kind of crazy. And so don't be surprised. I know Microsoft has already kind of talked about it with their investment. You're going to start seeing ChatGPT integrated into, we already see it starting to be integrated into Bing, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there's some really cool things that I've seen them talk about how they're going to integrate it into Office 365. So the ability to, inside of a Word document, leverage ChatGPT to help generate content. And I've even heard things like, here's my outline for my presentation, create my PowerPoint presentation for me based on this data. So, all right. So we're gonna attempt to kind of just talk real quick about how ChatGPT kind of works. And we won't get down into the flux capacitor level if you're familiar with, what was that movie? Back to the Future. So we won't go down to flux capacitor level, but at a high level, this is kind of how ChatGPT works. Think of it as they took a tremendous amount of data, and they called it a kind of a text corpus, if you will, of data from the internet, and used it to teach, grammar, content, kind of language patterns. They As they were kind of introducing this kind of massive data to it, they would tell it what was correct and what was not. And so that's how it learned, what answers to give and how to give those answers. The next kind of thing that's kind of transformational and is this concept of this transformer kind of neural network. And so this is a fancy way to say this is a pretty sophisticated architecture and algorithms that they use to kind of analyze data and understand the relationships between data and how those things integrate with each other to produce and understand what someone is prompting it with, and then to be able to generate and produce like human interacted content from that interaction. So I know that's a little nerdy. We won't get too deep into all the mechanics of kind of how all that works, because quite frankly, I don't understand all the content of it as well. I just know that it's based on this kind of transformer kind of model that they're using. It's a new kind of architecture. Both ChatGPT and Google's version, which we'll talk about as well, are all kind of based on this kind of transformer neural network kind of architecture. So that's kind of a high level of kind of what that is. So let's talk a little bit about features, because this is where it starts getting to some pretty cool, interesting things. So from a feature standpoint, and we'll show you some great examples of this here in a few minutes, but ChatGPT can generate just kind of high quality text in a variety of different ways. So some examples of text content. I like to use real world stuff, and so I use it to craft emails all the time and how I want to respond to an email. So I'm able to grab it and dump it in there, and it'll generate an email for me. It also does some pretty complex kind of prompts. And so some examples that I have for you when we talk about kind of complex prompts, you can go in and tell ChatGPT things like, hey, you're a customer service representative and you kind of interact with customers, and a customer ordered a product 2 weeks ago, but it hasn't arrived yet. Provide me with some content of how you would respond to that customer. So it's smart enough to read that very complex kind of situation and provide you with content of how to respond to a complex situation like that. Another example could be, hey, write me a step-by-step guide on how to bake a chocolate cake and include all the ingredients and preparation instructions and baking time. It will actually read, understand what you're asking, and generate that for you. Pretty crazy stuff. The other thing that I think is really pretty cool, and it's kind of input custom content. And so, Ted, I know this is part of your use case that you're going to talk about how we can take data, feed it into ChatGPT, and have it generate specific content based on what our inputs were. And Ted's got a great kind of use case that he'll go through here in a few minutes about this. Now, I think it's also important, it's fast and free. There is a paid version of ChatGPT that I believe it's $20 or $25 a month now for the paid version. And we'll kind of touch a little bit about limitations here in a second, and why you may want to look at the paid version of it as well. So speaking of limitations, this is some important information to kind of understand as you're starting to kind of play with it. know that this is still pretty new technology, and sometimes some of the information that you're going to get is not going to be accurate. Believe it or not, that everything on the internet is real and is accurate, and so sometimes what you'll get out of ChatGPT just may not be the correct information. So, validate what it's generating, for you as well, right? The other things, sometimes that content might be a little biased as well, or it's programmed so that it won't generate any kind of hurtful or harmful information, but sometimes that content might be swayed one way or the other, or may have some bias to it. So again, take that a little bit with a grain of salt, and just kind of validate the data that it's providing for you. The biggest limitation, and something that I think you'll end up seeing a change, as they continue to improve this technology, is it's a limited knowledge base right now. So ChatGPT is basically world events up into September of 2021 is when their data kind of corpus kind of ended. Now, when we talk about some of the other AI technologies, you'll see some of those others don't have this limitation. Specifically, Google's Bard does not have that limitation. We'll kind of talk about that as well. But just know the data that you're getting back from ChatGPT is limited up into September of 2021. And then the last one is it's really not connected to the internet. So for example, I can't go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what is Tesla's stock price today? It won't know that information because it's not connected, like I said, to the internet. So you can't ask it things that are current like that, as an example. But there are other tools that you can do and use that with. So,
yeah, I mean, I think one comment I would like to make, and an interesting experiment for everyone to do is, one important thing is, well, on the one hand, this technology, it's kind of like magic, right? You play with it, you're like, how in the world can this possibly work? And so it has that kind of magical quality to it. But on the flip side, the large language model, it's using all of the text that's been on the internet since 2021. It's not coming up with this text out of thin air. It's not original. There's no, like, the robot, the machine is not synthesizing new words. And one thing you can do to kind of test this is that if you've built a website before, or you in your own business have like a body of blog content that you actually wrote yourself, and you actually recognize your own phrases, you can go do deep prompts with ChatGPT, and you'll actually see how it's synthesizing content that you actually were the author of. So the important thing is that the way the system works is it's synthesizing this feedback from this huge corpus of text that it's gathered from the internet, but it's not original content. So it's reading all of Wikipedia, it's reading your website, it's reading every relevant website, it's reading blogs that you've written, and if you go give it a super specific prompt, you're going to see your own work product coming back at you in synthesized sentences. So that's just something. There's a lot of debate about, is this technology like plagiarism on steroids? Those are valid questions to ask, and other sorts of considerations you should think about. But it doesn't snatch these words out of thin air. It's synthesizing everything that's been produced on the internet in effect since up to 2021. So just something to think about, and you can test it if you've got an interesting body of your own writing already out on the internet. So talk to us about the benefits, Sean. Like, how do you see this benefiting businesses? How do you see it benefiting our business?
Yeah, absolutely. So right out of the gate, productivity just boosting. And so we're using it to boost productivity as we create content. I use it to boost productivity, responding to an email, little bitty kind of micro task that used to take me, 5 or 6 minutes to go craft an email, I could just drop, you know, hey, here's the original email. This is how I want to respond. I can do a couple little prompts to it and have ChatGPT generate, you know, call it 80% of what I would want to write. And typically it writes it better than what I would have written it anyway. And then I go just make a couple of tweaks to it and send it out. But I've done, like, a buddy of mine asked me to do an intro email to another colleague. And so I prompted ChatGPT, told it about this person and what he was interested with. And just, you know, in 30 seconds, I had an intro email that I was able to copy and paste and send out. And so those little bitty productivity gains, I think, are incredible. And again, it's a tool to go out and kind of play with. Operational efficiency, you know, jump starting kind of support task. And I've got this as one of our kind of case studies, and I'll hit on that in a minute. But in fact, I've got 2 really good case studies that I'll show you kind of how we're kind of leveraging it internally with code and support. And so I'll touch on that kind of operational efficiency. I mean, we're using it in our support department, we're using our marketing department, and our sales department to help generate content. Personal productivity, I kind of touched on this earlier just in my email example, but I'll give you another one. I had a speech that I needed to give at a fraternity kind of Founders Day weekend, and I kind of prompted ChatGPT, and it helped me basically write my speech for me, which was awesome. It had some good jokes in there and everything, so it was great. And then, you know, kind of boost bottom line kind of profits. If we're able to kind of leverage tools like this and do more with less, then what better way to reduce and make our team more efficient so that we can do more, right? Okay, so case studies. This is, hopefully everybody can read this. I know this is a little small, but I'll kind of give you the gist of it. Let's see, which one was this? Oh, this is our Atlanta United. So last night we had a great event at the Atlanta United match here in Atlanta, and so this is an example of us kind of prompting it, saying, "Hey, we want to write an email inviting, you know, prospects, clients to a luxury suite at an Atlanta United soccer match," and then you can see what ChatGPT created for us. And then I'm sure we went in, and like I said, it gets you like 80% of the way there. And so we were able to kind of go in, take this, tweak it, make it our own a little bit. And what's really interesting, and I should have brought this up earlier, is once it generates a response like this, you can reprompt it, and it understands what it previously wrote. So for example, we could have written it like this, and it generated this response for us. And then we could have went back to it and prompted it again and said, you know what, rewrite that email for me, but make it funnier this time. And it understands what make it funnier means and will change its whole tone. We could even go in and prompt it and say, hey, you know what, our ideal customer profile has these characteristics. And so as you write this email, take these into account. And it will take that content and tweak its message and its writing style based on that profile. So some pretty cool things like that you can do. Ted, anything you want to add about this one?
No, I would say that the you know, just another personal example. I love your speech example, and I actually know somebody who's like the CEO of like a Fortune 500 company, and he had to give a retirement speech to somebody who was retiring. A senior executive was retiring from the company, and he used ChatGPT to write the retirement speech. So, you know, everybody and their brother can really leverage this technology. There's a ton of different use cases, and it all requires, it's a personal assistant. It's something to turbocharge you. It's something to jumpstart, break through that writer's block that we all kind of occasionally struggle with. And you always need to put your own polish on it. usually, and make it your own. But it gets you 80% of the way there, which dramatically reduces the amount of time we all need to spend on these various sort of writing tasks.
That's right. So here's another use case, and I'll tell you, this is something that we're internally kind of playing with and testing with. I will also kind of say, we don't really have a slide for this, but just understand that there is what I'll call a back-end application program interface, or API, into ChatGPT. So you don't necessarily have to go interact with it from a human standpoint. We're playing around and working on and testing the ability to leverage an API interface on the back end to, as we have support requests come in, grab things like what you see here in this example. Hey, what are the main troubleshooting steps if a QuickBooks database gets corrupt? And so we're trying to prompt ChatGPT, get a response of some basic troubleshooting steps, and then kind of automatically load that into our ticketing system. So by the time one of our engineers gets to the ticket, they may already have some, troubleshooting steps already kind of loaded into the ticket to help improve our performance and our efficiency in dealing with issues. So, but this is a great example of something like that. Being able to prompt it and say, hey, this is an issue that I'm having, with a QuickBooks database that's corrupt. What are some of the things, and from a troubleshooting standpoint, that we can look at? And you guys can see here, I mean, it cranked out 5 suggestions of things to look for and possible ways to fix this, which is hugely helpful as you're sometimes dealing with some complex technical issues, to being able to kind of leverage something like this to get a step up in your efficiency.
Right. And I think just to kind of peel back the onion a little bit on some of the R&D that we're doing in our own business, it's, the knowledge bases have always been super important to organizations to empower frontline support staff to quickly get problems resolved, right? I mean, when you have standard operating procedures, or you have common problems you come across, you document those solutions and you put them into a knowledge base, and it really empowers the organization to have super brain power to be able to quickly get problems solved. This allows us to kind of take that to another. I mean, this sort of technology allows you to take that, be even more proactive. And the example Sean is giving is that what we're playing with is how to we ingest the ticket, be able to analyze the text response, the text question from an individual on the actual problem they're having, and then proactively in the actual support ticket, give these steps to the frontline support rep, so they're able to just be that much more fast and productive on solving people's problems. So that's really where it's like turbocharge. The robot is not going to eliminate the human outreach of probably fixing the QuickBooks database, but you're going to potentially turbocharge that support person to be that much faster and smarter when they go to solve the problem.
Yep, exactly right.
Okay. Talk to us about this one here.
Okay, so this is one that a lot of people might not think about, which when I was first introduced to ChatGPT, this is where we kind of started, where we had some complex scripts that we were working on. So not only can ChatGPT write an email for us, it can actually write code for us as well. So you can see the prompt that I gave it. Hey, write us a PowerShell script for Office 365 to block email from every country except for the United States. And so it's smart enough to understand exactly what I was asking of it. And then it wrote the PowerShell code for us. You can see it written for us to be able to leverage this and run it in an Office 365 environment to set that up to block it. So you can write SQL code, you can write website code. The fact that it can actually write code for us is pretty impressive.
Right. So I want to, Sean, a couple, two questions are in the queue that have kind of the same theme, and let me just read them to you in rapid succession. So Troy asked, does this technology allow for you to reduce or eliminate lower entry-level positions? And then Simon asks, don't we risk the possibility of getting rid of our executive admin and office assistants positions? So talk to us about your point of view on what this does to how work will change and how the workforce will change potentially.
Yeah, I don't think it eliminates some of those, entry level, service desk positions. I think it's going to make them more efficient in what they're doing. I think they'll be able to come up to speed quicker. In our QuickBooks example that we gave earlier, the ability for them to write questions and just human natural language and get, technical good responses back, I think will just supercharge their ability to learn and grow quicker. And so I like it from that perspective. And so I don't think it eliminates them. I think it makes them more efficient and are able to do more quicker with less knowledge in the very beginning as they are kind of learning and growing in their skills. And so I guess the next question around kind of the executive assistant, there are some things that I think you're going to be able to probably leverage ChatGPT to do that an executive assistant may be doing now. The way I always kind of think about that is that just frees that person up to go do some more advanced things for me or for us. And take some of the things that they may have taken them 20 or 30 minutes to do, and now they're only going to take 10 minutes to do. And so that's going to just free up time for them to be able to work on maybe more strategic or more tactical things to just continue to supercharge and help us do what we do. Some jobs eventually may be replaced by technology like this. We see that today, right? There's lots of things that technology is doing to improve efficiency and boost productivity. And some jobs that were that we had in the past no longer exist because of different technology. And so I think it will just kind of transition into the next evolution of what we think of as like an administrative assistant kind of deal.
Yeah, and my 2 cents on this particular topic is the only people or roles that will be eliminated are people who refuse to embrace this new technology. The reality is, technology for hundreds of years has been impacting how we work, how we spend our time, how labor gets divided, where we focus. And, it's very rare that you can just point to an example where some technology completely eliminates something. Yes, we don't manufacture many buggy whips anymore because we don't ride horses, we drive automobiles, So yes, there are things that eventually go away. But a technology like this, I think the danger people, look, there's a lot of fear mongering, I think, around AI right now, in my opinion. But the reality is if you just look at your own personal productivity and the people you manage, you have to just lean in and embrace this technology to find ways to help it make your people more productive on the job. So on a very practical level, for instance, our sales team, none of our prospects or clients are going to want to go to the Atlanta United game with a robot, but they're going to want to go with smart sales folks and account managers from SnapTech IT. And we're going to talk about how we grow our businesses together and how we collaborate. But we have shown our sales team how to leverage this technology to boost their own personal productivity. If they get a question from a client, they can use ChatGPT to quickly accelerate their email response and give back a very quality answer to a prospect who's asking a question. So the only person who's going to lose their job is a salesperson who doesn't really embrace this technology, for example, in my opinion. So
yeah. So speaking of jobs, in fact, I think you'll start seeing AI-specific kind of roles get created where people are really good at understanding how to prompt these AI to get the answers and the content that they want out of them. So I think you'll start seeing kind of a new position and new role that comes out that is this kind of AI expert, if you will.
Yeah, and I think the other way to think about it too is, you know, there's a lot of things that people do where that requires a high level of skill, where again, this will just help turbocharge what they already do. And so the example I would give is writing blogs. Over in my career, I'm a marketing and sales guy. Over my career, done a ton of writing, everything from writing data sheets, product brochures, email copy for newsletters and blogs and white papers. And this sort of technology, it doesn't do it for you. It simply turbocharges what you're doing and helps bootstrap you. And really, in the case of, I would say in the case of blogging, so let me talk about my personal experience, blogging. There's two really fundamental ways that ChatGPT has helped me write blogs in the recent past. Number one, what it's allowed me to do is research. There are oftentimes when you're trying to write a very informative piece of content, I will spend personally, 60% of the time that total to create that blog on researching what I'm going to write, building out my outline, building out my key themes, making sure I understand a couple key concepts I want to explain. And technology like this allows you to use very normal language, simple language to ask it to explain complex concepts to you and to give you very informative content back that's not buried under a whole bunch of Google sponsored links and advertisements and everything else. It gives you back a very readable, accessible piece of content that you can help get your head around very advanced technical subjects that you often need to kind of simplify or crystallize. So research, it's a huge win. And then also just helping you write. So here, the prompt is write a 500-word blog. Again, that's another thing you can do is you can be very specific on your prompt writing to give it a word count limit, which is super important because you could say, like, give me a email that's 50 words or less. So it gives you something super terse. But here I've asked it, write a 500-word blog on the benefits of a business-grade firewall. And it gives back. I worked for 5 years at SonicWall at a firewall company, and this is pretty darn good copy to get back from the robot to explain how a business-grade firewall works. And so, I've written this blog 10 years ago, or this white paper 10 years ago, but I had to sit down with an engineer, have him explain it to me, and then I had to sit down for a couple hours and write this all out. Now you can produce this in a matter of minutes. So hopefully we're all going to get smarter. We're all going to have knowledge at our fingertips. And those of us who are in the business of creating content for customers or partners or clients, that sort of thing, that we're going to be that much more productive doing it. But blogging, creating marketing content, it's a huge one. And then just very traditional, this is kind of related to the comment I was making around blog research. We all are always trying to find ways to do things better or more efficiently or to solve different business challenges we have. I lead sales and marketing at SnapTech, and we recently implemented a piece of technology called Gong in our sales team. But just you can use ChatGPT to do some very high quality research. Now, again, the caveats come that ChatGPT is only going to give you information that's relevant up to mid 2021. So that's a big caution. And it actually responds. It says, as of my knowledge cutoff date in September 2021, here's what I know. But here's just a good R&D question. Who are the leading competitors to Gong? Several of these, Chorus AI, Conversica, SalesLoft, those are solutions that I took a very close look at as alternatives to Gong. But again, a very nice 500-word answer to what could potentially have taken you, 45 minutes of research on the internet to get this quality list of alternatives out here. And again, it just jumpstarts the kind of research you need to do. And it could be any topic under the sun where you ask it to do this sort of research for you. Okay, so let's talk about some alternatives. So what's very interesting just on the news front is, the minute the tens of millions of users of ChatGPT started to climb, there was literally a code red moment over at Google, because how have we traditionally used a Google search? A lot of it's about doing your own personal R&D. You use a Google search to quickly help you find the information you need to do. And so Google has tons of expertise in AI, but they immediately set off huge alarm bells, this technology, because it dramatically threatens their search franchise. And because this is a much more compelling way in a lot of cases, to go do your research, because you get back clean text that you can just digest without a whole mountain of advertisements and everything else in front of you. And so that, of course, diminishes the value of a traditional Google search or a Bing search, as it were. And so Google has rapidly, in just 6 months' time, really played catch up, and they recently introduced their free version of a similar sort of tool, and it's called Bard AI. And it behaves very, very similarly. I would say there's a lot of stylistic and kind of soft differences between the responses you get. But one of the biggest differences between Bard and ChatGPT is that Bard is leveraging real-time content from the internet. So there is no knowledge cutoff. There is no engine that the free version is using that has a cutoff date. So if you're looking for that Tesla stock price or the change in the Tesla stock price in the last month, you would probably want to ask Bard that, but not ChatGPT that. So again, both tools are free. Both tools, ChatGPT, for all intents and purposes, is a subsidiary of Microsoft at this point. So really, we're talking about technology coming from the two of the largest technology companies in the world. But we, as small business owners or players, we got to leverage this technology just like the big boys, and definitely get at looking at all the different alternatives. And Bard is one of them. So.
Yep.
Sean, I don't know if you have any experience using Bard, but
yeah, I do. So I would say that Google has had this AI technology, but they've used it internally for a long time now. To Ted's point, they just recently kind of started releasing kind of Bard out into the public, and then last week, I believe it was last week, they released another enhancement to Bard AI. Now, Ted already mentioned it, but some of the major differences, it is connected to the internet. It does have all of Google's kind of course of data, including things like YouTube. And so all of those videos are all now indexed and accessible by Bard as well. Now, one of the cool things, and Ted and I were talking about this earlier, what you'll start seeing, and Bard and Google have already started introducing this concept of plugins. And so this is, I think, the next evolution of where this technology is headed, is they already have kind of plugins with things like OpenTable and Kayak and Instacart. And so one of the use cases that I just heard this week, an example of this person was giving was, they asked Bard to create them a keto 3-meal plan with recipes and all the ingredients, and then they were able to use the Instacart plugin and dump the whole shopping list into Instacart, and it just ordered it and shipped it to his house. So Bard AI generated all of the recipes and all the ingredients, and then it sent it over to Instacart, and it ordered it and shipped it to his house. So, Ted, to your point, as long as it's in stock, right, in Instacart,
right.
But I think you'll start seeing more and more of these plugins. Now, ChatGPT also has plugins that they're introducing. It's in their paid version right now, and it's a slow rollout, so not everybody has access to it yet, but they will over time. And I expect ChatGPT to continue to expand its data corpus as well. And so I think eventually you'll see it have kind of live internet data eventually as well. I'll just kind of, one other thing about that. I still think ChatGPT does a little bit better job of writing kind of content than what I've gotten out of Bard so far. But again, it could just be a stylistic thing. But anyway, that's just been my experience so far.
Yeah, so to date, on today's webinar, we've talked about like the free experience of using ChatGPT. Well, we want to comment on, to Sean's point, OpenAI as an organization and then as a for-profit company has been working with a lot of like commercial partners. So Sean talked about the APIs, and so there's lots and lots of companies that are leveraging the application interfaces to the various OpenAI engines to build products that behave similarly or solve different sorts of problems or enhance their core application in a different sort of way. So we just want to comment on a couple of those. So very first one, most obvious, is that ChatGPT is free, but sometimes you'll have the experience of logging in to go to use it, and it's out of resources. I mean, I think one thing we didn't mention on this webinar yet is that one of the hugest investments that Microsoft has made is in all the compute resources that are required to do this massive computational work in the core application. And so the Azure cloud is like a key resource doing a lot of this compute. But even with the free product, what you'll sometimes see is you'll log in and it says we're busy, like there's too many people logged in using it. It seems to have abated in the past couple of months. I haven't seen that experience lately, but they very quickly introduced ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 a month, and it gives you priority access to the service. So it's faster, it has priority access, you're not going to have these capacity constraints. And then two other applications that I want to point out that have made big news or are things that we're using. First of all, Bing. So Microsoft's made all these investments. They see the writing on the. I mean, they're leading the market in terms of leveraging this technology to make search better, a better experience. And so a lot of this tech is showing up in the new Bing, and we'll just show how that experience looks very briefly. And then another one that I'm a big fan of is a company called Jasper. And Jasper is a standalone AI service that's designed for marketers. And what they do is they leverage different large language model libraries. And so they've been a partner with OpenAI for several years. And what they've done is they've built really, if you think about it, more of like an application layer that sits on top of the ChatGPT like data and experience and engine. And they design it for specific marketing use cases. And I'll show you some screenshots and I'll comment on how that actually works. But if we look at the new Bing, if you haven't had a chance to use it, originally it was like kind of hard to get from the wait list onto the actual production list. I think that's not such a big deal anymore. But now if you use Bing, when you ask it anything, you can use the chat function for Bing, and it gives you, it leverages the same OpenAI engine, but it actually leverages the GPT-4 engine, which has later content than ChatGPT. And the other interesting design principle that Microsoft has come back with is and it's just interesting, they provide, references for the content that gets shared, which I think is kind of interesting. It makes it more authoritative. It also gives you, when you're doing deeper research, it gives you additional avenues to dig in further. But again, it also shows you that all this content, it's coming from other places. It's coming from content that's right out on the web already, and hopefully from highly authoritative sources, though. But by referencing it, it allows you to really triple check the authority of the content you're consuming and using. But it really changes how search, the whole search experience, in my opinion. But let's talk about Jasper real quick. Again, Jasper, it's a little unclear all the different engines they use, but the beauty of Jasper is it's a SaaS application that leverages AI, generative AI, to help marketers produce content. But it's really where they're really investing is all the different kind of templated different use cases you would have to actually need generative AI. So you have social media posts, you have product descriptions, you have blogs, you have a blog intro paragraph, or you have a blog outline. And I use this blog intro paragraph thing quite a bit, where again, here's that same question I keep asking things. How much does a business grade firewall cost? And it will spit out 3 different paragraphs that could serve as the intro to that particular blog post. So it's just a different sort of attack on the market. You could say, well, I mean, there's no question, in my opinion, that you're going to have like the freemium open versions of these products, and then you're going to have a premium layer, which again takes it to another level by either solving a specific use case problem like marketing or legal or what have you, and then you're going to pay for access to those SaaS applications that leverage this technology and maybe solve problems in a unique and different sort of way. So we're going to wrap up here. I want to remind you, if you've got questions for us, we've got a couple more minutes for questions, about 9 minutes to go. But what we wanted to wrap up with is just a use case. In Q1, I was personally responsible for writing 6 client case studies. So these are case studies that showcase our relationship with our existing clients. And I want to talk about how I use generative AI and specifically ChatGPT to help me do this project faster and better. So in these case studies, the first thing I did is I leveraged Microsoft Teams to record my interviews with the clients. So if you didn't know you could do that in Teams, another cool capability in Microsoft Teams, we did a webinar a couple months back about life hacking Microsoft 365. A great one is turn on the transcription feature, record and transcription feature in Microsoft Teams. So what I did in this case is I did the interviews with these clients, I recorded the session, and then Teams actually produced a transcription of the interview. The next thing is I took very detailed notes as I was going along. Now, what I wanted to do next was, okay, figure out how ChatGPT could help me turbocharge my content creation effort. So one thing I did is I took my notes, I upload them to ChatGPT, and I said, hey, write me a case study based on my notes. Spits out the results. I copy paste that, put in my working document. The next thing I did is I took the transcription of our conversation and I said, write me a case study based upon this conversation with this client. And then the third thing I did is I asked ChatGPT in a more brief way, give me an about us block of content for each one of these clients. And then I dropped that into my working document. And really, to be frank, it's like ChatGPT did not write any of the case studies. It did not like spit back from my notes and go, oh, here is, a perfectly written case study from beginning to end to help, to make it so you don't need to write this thing. It didn't do that because it's just, there's somewhat nuance in the way I want to organize the content or the tone I want to take with the content. But what it did do is it gave me some very good sentences or combinations of sentences that I could use in the writing. And I had to really synthesize all of this content and piece it together. But what I would say is it probably saved me about 30% of the time in terms of writing up the case studies themselves. And that's 30%. That's a lot. When you're writing 6 case studies, that's like getting 2 for free. I mean, it really turbocharged my efforts and saved me a whole lot of time. But it didn't completely eliminate, the robot didn't do the interview with the client, right? The robot didn't have a nice, intelligent exchange with one of our clients about the business problems we're solving together. But the robot definitely did help me dramatically speed up the writing process and helping me synthesize the content, and occasionally came up with just like winning sentences that I would have to have written myself. So real life use case and real life business results that, every business that's here today probably has the need to create marketing content. And this is definitely a technology you should embrace on your team. So let's go to the Q&A log. So this is a good question. So Dan asks, when you put information into ChatGPT, like the transcript that you mentioned, does that go into the public for ChatGPT to use for other uses? It's a good question. I mean, I'll be frank, I don't really know the answer, other than I've read quite a few like blog articles about kind of for more the legal eagles out there who are like, hey, make sure whatever you're feeding this system that it's not like personally identifiable information that contains things like social security numbers or, the contact information for your clients or anything like that. So, I mean, this is probably another one you want to put on that, cautions and considerations slide. I would say in general, when we have it, on my particular use case, we had permission from these clients to write a story about them. So taking the transcript and dropping it into ChatGPT is probably not a huge risk, but it's a little unknown what they're gathering. It's probably documented somewhere, and I'm just not aware. But Sean, I don't know if you've got any insights onto this particular topic.
I don't. I don't think it goes into their kind of public knowledge and for others to leverage, but that is a concern of ours as well. And so we do a good bit of, not only data scrubbing when we're doing kind of an API call to pull out, any kind of sensitive data or personally identifiable information. That's definitely a concern of ours. You can also, and this starts getting into a little nerd stuff, but you can actually build your own kind of ChatGPT in Azure and have it private just to you. So, but we don't have enough time to dive into that technical of a detail, but that is something you can do to make it exclusive to your organization.
There's a couple more questions here. This one's kind of a flyer a little bit, but Dan asks, what are some uses for billing and collections? Any ideas, Sean?
Billing and collections. Well, I could see it writing, collection emails or letters for you. And so if you, maybe you want to create a 3 or 3, 4, 5 email campaign for a collection sequence that gets, a little more stern as the emails progress. I could see you kind of leveraging it to do something like that. I'm sure that would take all of just a couple of minutes to have ChatGPT, crank out an email sequence that you could use for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, virtually any content creation task, you can really get good with the prompts, and it takes a fair amount of experimentation, to do. So, but again, the beauty is the free and open source tools are available to go, start leveraging today. Michelle asks, what does this mean for students and teachers with regard to plagiarism?
Yeah, so there are already tools that are coming out now that will pick up and identify whether or not content was AI generated or not. So I think you'll start seeing, well, I think, education needs to make a decision about is it good to leverage a tool? You could do math in your head or you could do math on a calculator. That's just a tool you use. Is ChatGPT the next version of a calculator, or is it, considered plagiarism and cheating? So I like the idea of, our education system kind of teaching and leveraging new tools like this. But I think that there is kind of a fine line between did you write it or did AI write it? And, I don't know if I necessarily want, kids, not having to go do research and kind of write their own papers anymore. That kind of maybe defeats the purpose a little bit. But leveraging a tool to do research, I think is a great use case for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that the academic institutions need to set up the guardrails and the boundaries and define what their policy is, because these tools are available. And students will skate out on thin ice and bend the rules just like they have from time immemorial. So that's going to happen. The good news is, like Sean mentioned, there are tools available that allow instructors or professors to feed papers into a tool to understand whether there's a massive plagiarism problem or not, but it is a very complex issue, as Sean mentioned, because you know, in a lot of cases, you want to let students leverage all the different tools that are available to them to do that R&D and do that research, but we do need people to be able to write, because all the robots won't be able to do it for you all the time. So I think we've got a couple more questions, but I think we're out of time. We like to try to end these, start on time and end on time. We want to thank everybody for joining us for this month's SnapTech IT webinar. Hopefully you took away some tidbits that you can take back and start leveraging in your own business, or we provided some food for thought for how you can leverage this technology in your own organization. We appreciate any feedback you have for us all, and thanks for joining us. Sean, it's a lot of fun today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good seeing you.
All right, take care, everybody. We'll see you on next month's webinar. Take care now.